Hey, before you take off, you got to listen to this episode of Shoe In.
I always talk to my team about if the box feels too small for us, it's probably just right, because that gives you a chance of really understanding that consumer and doing something meaningful.
Hey, welcome back to another exciting conversation around the shoe industry at the shoe industry's favorite podcast, Shoe and Show. Sandi, you and I today are going to be talking about an iconic brand founded in 1963 in Denmark that is now globally recognized and is having a renaissance, if you will, here in the United States. And we have the brand's fearless leader with us, which I'm very excited about. So let's just cut to the chase. Sandi, who's on Shoe and Show today?
Sure. We're excited to have Neal Taylor, CEO of Americas for ECCO, on with us today. And I'm really excited about this conversation. I've seen the resurgence. I've seen the new energy. So welcome, Neal. We're excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Sandi. Thank you, Matt. Excited to be here.
We always start off by introducing our guests and asking them the simple question of how did you enter the footwear industry? What was your path, your journey to this industry? So please share.
Yeah. So I was not born into the shoe industry. A little different to, I know, some of your guests previously. So I like to call myself a marketeer by birth who then moved into the shoe industry. So my early jobs were in sports marketing. I spent some time with Red Bull marketing at a time. So think about the early mid 2000s when Red Bull was doing some crazy stuff. I mean, they still do some great stuff, but it was a pretty amazing breeding ground to be at in terms of learning about what a brand is and how you connect it to consumers. And so had an amazing experience there. And then I got invited to be a part of the Reebok journey. And this was not long after the Reebok acquisition by Adidas. And so it was a kind of a pivotal time in the brand. And I grew up in the UK. So if you grew up in the UK in the 90s, Reebok was it. It was the brand. And so that was pretty amazing to me that there was this brand that had this kind of amazing history that had lost its way. So that was my path into being into footwear. So I joined in marketing in a European role, actually in the Adidas office in Amsterdam. So there was all sorts of fun and games in that in terms of a post-acquisition, cultural mergers, finding the way. I spent 16 amazing years at Reebok in Amsterdam and in Boston across a bunch of roles. I kind of would like to talk about it as the end-to-end of the value chain, from global strategy, so sort of 3 to 5 years, to product innovation on similar timelines, all the way through to front-end sales, ran the classics business or international business. So I fell in love with the footwear industry versus being born into it. But I do have one funny story of when I first moved from Red Bull to Reebok, people would ask me 6 months in, 12 months in, what's the biggest difference? And I said, this industry is wild, that every 6 months you tip everything up and start again with like a new range. And so I'd come from this kind of FMCG, CPG background where there was innovation, but I would guess it was more measured, to here we go, everyone starts again 6 months later. So that took a lot of adjustment to get to, and I've enjoyed the ride.
I love that, because even some of the commonalities between Red Bull and Reebok and maybe the industry more broadly is this aspirational idea, right? That you're aspiring to do something, whether you need energy to do something or to perform, or you need great footwear to do something or to perform. And so there's got to be a lot of crossroads there. But now it takes you into the ECCO world, which is a family-owned heritage brand, globally recognized. Let's compare and contrast like Red Bull to Reebok to ECCO. What are some of the differences you're seeing, and maybe some of the similarities as you've taken the helm here in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'll start with some of the similarities, which is that the consumer is the consumer. And it doesn't matter whether you're family owned, public owned, which segment you're in, you got to understand your consumer. And I've been parts of companies along the way where we haven't understood the consumer. We've been caught up in our own belief system. I would say one thing Red Bull was amazing about was truly understanding the consumer. And that allows you to be very creative within almost that niche that you create. Moving to ECCO, I think the biggest difference of being family owned is we are very fortunate in that I would say I don't have that, I'll call it arbitrary quarterly pressure to, hey, you just got to get this done. It doesn't matter if it's right for the business in the long run, but we got to get this quarter done, which we all know is a very real dynamic within the public companies. My brief in taking over the turnaround of ECCO Americas was do the right things for the business, and we'll let time take care of itself, which is, I'm very grateful and fortunate to be in that place.
Talk to us a little bit about marketing and leaning into the customer, as you call it. I know you've had a lot of experience with that. And again, across industries, you've been able to create something exciting and, a little bit out of the box. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your strategies there.
Yeah, I think it's about trying to be as specific as you can be about the consumer you're targeting. I always talk to my team about if the box feels too small for us, it's probably just right, because that gives you a chance of really understanding that consumer and doing something meaningful. I think it gets harder when we allow creep. So it was this, but now it's this, and it could be this as well. And to me, there's always a difference between who we sell to and who we talk to. Like if a consumer that's out here for us wants to spend their dollars on our shoes, please do. I'm so grateful. But that doesn't mean I'm going to try and talk to all of them with a message. I'm going to talk to you with a message that's relevant to you, and then it'll halo out here if we do things well. Because I still believe the strongest marketing any brand has, especially in the footwear industry, is peer-to-peer recommendation of your product. True. Right? There are very few people who truly want to be the leaders of, I'm wearing something no one else is. There are a lot more people who are, I want to wear exactly what everyone else is. And therefore, that's when you start to get that peer-to-peer recommendation, which drives the scale. And I really believe the brand relevance and brand energy.
Is the brand relevance of ECCO in the European market the same from a messaging and marketing perspective as you would find in the US market? Or are there differences that you've noticed and picked up on that make this a unique market, whether it's louder or has a different style to it? What are some of the differences you see here in the US relative to the European market?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some differences for the ECCO brand, and some of that is how we've driven the business. I think what we're seeing happening very fast in the North American market is this pivot to dress casual from the consumer. It's a real tailwind for the ECCO business. We're hearing this from all of our key accounts. We're seeing it in our direct-to-consumer business. So this dress hybrid is a really great great trend for ECCO to be rolling off. That's happening in Europe, but maybe not at the same speed. And then the other market, which is highly relevant for ECCO, is China, which is very driven by our Biome business, which is a more kind of technical, performance aesthetic-led business. So some differences around the world, but I think if you think about the core of why ECCO was born, we were shoemakers, right? We figured out how to make the highest quality, most comfortable shoes in the marketplace. And that's what we're getting back to in North America. And this whether it's people going back to the office or a more formal aesthetic starting to trend, that's really working in our favor.
That's great. What is the opportunity now for ECCO? I mean, I think, you've already talked about marketing and innovation a little bit, but what is the opportunity in terms of scale or a new category? You talked a little bit also about, some of the new technologies and some of the tanneries and things like that, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I think a lot of the opportunity for ECCO is in doing the basics of what we are really well. If you look at ECCO over, let's call it since COVID, we've lost our way. We became probably too fixated on number of pairs in the marketplace. So we own the end-to-end of our value chain, right? You guys know that, but not everybody knows that. Our own tanneries, our own factories. This is a really positive dynamic. If at some point we want to talk about speed to market or flexibility and agility in supply chain, this is where you win from having the end-to-end of your value chain. If you're not careful in how you manage it, it can create behavior that's not sustainable, right? In terms of got to fill the factories, need more pairs. And so I think we've really zeroed back in North America now to being consumer-led, so demand-led. And I think it's about that dress space is a really important one for us, for male and female consumers. There's a new range we have on the female side coming out middle of this year, which we're super excited about. It's called Elevate, but it really comes from this where to work. So this notion of more people going back to the office, they're being asked to dress up, but they don't want to sacrifice on comfort and quality and durability. And so this versatility of usage occasions is really key for us. It's not for us as much about a new category we've never been into. It's really about doing what we do better and the best.
Well, the US marketplace in general is mass retail, big box retail, suburbia, different than your European marketplace, but we still have a very vibrant independent channel. Talk about the strategy. My assumption is that for ECCO, for this kind of reimagining of ECCO or this kind of relaunching under your leadership here in the US market, is that the independent channels are really critically important, but there are less of them. So is that still the strategy, or is it kind of all the above when it comes to meeting the consumer's demands?
Yeah, I think that's the right way to say it, Matt, is that it's all of the above in terms of, we call it our omni-channel blueprint, but really what that's about is, yes, we need to have a direct-to-consumer business. If you look at ECCO.com, we want that to be the best version of the brand, because we know whether you're purchasing or not from us, it's a place consumers are going to go as a reference point to find out what is our range, what is our story. And so that's very important to us from that respect. We have our key wholesale partners, think of a Nordstrom, a Dillard's, who deliver a great on and offline in-store experience. So they're important to us. But if you look at a lot of the richness and the kind of fabric of history in ECCO, it's been with the independents. I was at the Atlanta show, not the one just gone, but the one before, and I had the chance to meet with a couple of the independents. And they were telling these stories of literally meeting with our founder, Carl Tusbury, and having a breakfast and sketching out on a napkin a shoe that he would go back to Denmark and he would make and he would bring it back to them. And so you have this real love for ECCO in the independent channel, I would say from a trade perspective, but also from a consumer perspective. There's a loyal consumer there that we didn't serve. So if I go back to that, we were off down these paths that maybe were not the right alleys for us to go down. We have to get back, and we have got back to delivering the basics for those independents, because the quality of service they provide, the beauty of ECCO is in its craftsmanship, right? It's very, the independents are so good at telling that story that they will always be a big part of the fabric of our business.
That's fair. I love that you also bring people and companies and editors and some customers to your headquarters, to the tanneries and the factories, to make sure that they understand the quality and the story behind it. And I think it's so authentic, right? I mean, people are trying to create these stories out of nothing. And you have such a really strong, interesting story that lives on, and innovation is just the key behind it all. So kudos to you and your team for doing that. I've heard so many great experiences from people that I know in the industry. What about performance? I'm curious about that. You've dabbled in that. Is that an area of growth for you? Are you leaning in there? I know golf was a category back in the day that I saw that was really strong for ECCO. I know you've talked about running. Talk to me about performance.
So golf is still very important to us, especially in the North American market. And candidly, that's another one where we had hit after hit after hit in terms of product franchises in golf with our Biome series. And we had a couple of misses, but we're back on it now. We've just been at the PGA show, really good response to our new range. And so I think this goes back to the same as I was talking about earlier, which is really understanding the consumer. ECCO doesn't have a problem building great shoes. And Sandi, to your point on why do we bring people over? Because when you show them how we make shoes and how much care and attention there is, it's as good as anybody else. But if we don't understand the consumer insight well enough, we're going to miss. And so that's what had been happening. But golf is a big focus of attention for us that you'll see ramp up from back to school this year through 2027. In terms of, I would say, running or training, those are less of a focus area for us. We want to own walking. So we want to be specialists in walking. And we talk about any walking occasion. So that's, I'm walking to the office. I am literally going out for a power walk. Whenever you're walking, ECCO wants to be the shoe that is the right answer for you. And so we get, I've been at ECCO 362 days now. I don't count every day, but I looked it up just for the purpose of this. So almost a year, but I can't tell you how many times I said to people, I work at ECCO, and they say, most comfortable shoes I've ever worn, right? All the time I get this. We just need to get more people to try our product, because that's the answer for us, because then we create these advocates.
So I want to go back. I'm really fascinated by the fact that you were at Red Bull, because I just remember the ads with the cartoons and the wings and the whole thing, and seeing like racer derbies and things getting launched and the guy going to the edge of space and all that stuff. Is any of that guerrilla marketing? Is there any part of you, Neal, like deep down inside, that says, you know what? I've been here 362 days. I really want to try this thing, which might be a little bit of a stretch for a brand like ECCO? Or are you just kind of trying to remain in the four walls of the historic brand that you serve?
It's a little bit of both. It's fun. I tell people the story. One of our unwritten KPIs at Red Bull was, have you been in trouble legally this year from something you've done marketing wise? And the example I always give everyone is, we had a little fold out piece of paper that was kind of this size. It sat under the bottom of a can, concertinaed out, but it was blank on the inside. And it was for exam time, because a lot of the students would take Red Bull and they were allowed to take it into their exams. So it was for you to write your cheat notes. This was, before we had phones. You would write your cheat notes and then stick it back under your can of Red Bull, and the brand was endorsing that. Now, what I would say is that got us in trouble with the authorities, but that made the students love us even more, right? So I think that's this kind of energy piece, but that's right for the Red Bull brand, because it had that kind of slightly rebellious, anti-authoritarian piece to it. I don't think that's authentic to ECCO, but I think what ECCO has to do, and Sandi, you touched on this earlier, when we bring people to Denmark, to our tanneries, they are wowed by what we can do. We haven't been great at telling that story to consumers. And so I think, Matt, that's the puzzle that my marketing team and I are trying to figure out right now, is what can we do to really bring that authenticity that you can feel really good and proud about wearing an ECCO brand. And the reason I say that is you're going to feel great about wearing the product, but this specializing in walking is what we are looking to bring to life in the back half of this year.
That's great. Is there anything that you would share to other people that are building a brand today, and your experiences, that you would say, here are some lessons that I've learned that you should do, and maybe a few that you should stay away from, so that people understand some of the mistakes that they might be able to avoid in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that there's two that I would say are very important in terms of be really clear on who you are, because if you are even semi-diluted internally, you have no chance with a consumer. And that's why I keep going back to this. It should feel like this internally, because once we get into consumer land, you're going to get enough dilution from everybody else. So be here. The other piece is, don't be afraid to experiment. Like, you're not going to get everything right. And so you definitely got to be experiment. My watch out, and I will tell you, was a difference from when I was at Red Bull to then when I started at Reebok, was you have to treat your brand as your most precious asset. And so I'll give you for example. Not long after I started at Red Bull, I got these product info sheets printed, and they were to hand out to student athletes, just a little bit about what Red Bull was. And I'd used the wrong logo. And I was like, oh, yep, okay, use the wrong logo. This went all the way up to Global HQ. It was a major issue. Like, it was a major deal that I thought was a big overreaction. But what I came to understand was the details matter. And when you take care of your brand like it's your child, like no harm will come to this, it's much better for you. Conversely, not long after I started at Reebok, and I forget how long, but we printed these somewhat cheap gift with purchases that had our brand all over them. And they didn't say good things about our brand. It said the brand's cheap or crappy. And I said, why are we doing this? It's like, well, that was all we could afford. So to me, it's that's the juxtaposition, right? Of like, you can be caught up in, well, we just had to, and it's okay. It's only one thing. Be obsessed about treating a brand like your baby.
I love that. You can't cheat on your test. Or no, you can cheat on your test, but can't mess up the logo. That is a no-no.
Correct.
So I'm glad you learned that, Neal. Now, let's say we're having this conversation 362 days from now.
Yeah.
What do you hope to accomplish in 26? There's a lot of volatility. We're trying to keep this conversation buzzkill free, but if you want to say the T word, we can talk about it. But from a volatile perspective, what do you hope to accomplish in your second year at the helm?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be remiss if we didn't just touch on the volatility, because I think it affects every part of the business. What we're trying to be as flexible as we can We think about some of our supply chain pieces I talked about, but without reacting. I think if we go back a few months, we were all trying to jump 12 hours after we got a new piece of information. And then by the time we made it happen, it had turned around again. So we're trying to be a little more measured in our response, but still keeping an eye on it. But mostly it's about being really focused on our plan. So I talk about the fundamentals of our business, which is we have to have the brand clarity that I've been talking about. And then we have to take that to the consumer, which is a big focus over the next months. ECCO is a very humble brand. So if you think about ECCO growing up, it was, we will make great product and that will be enough because people will discover us. And I think the space is just so crowded now where we still need to make great product, but we actually have to tell some people about that. So that's a focus for the next 12 months. And then it's about newness and innovation within our product line, which is coming. We're starting to get it. We've got some nice sell-through that's starting to pick up this year. We're starting to look at longer-term roadmaps as a company, which is a helpful aspect for us in terms of product authenticity. And the last piece I would say is about the discipline of execution. So when you have that moment of, we're a bit short of where we wanted to be this quarter, don't panic. Don't go overly promotional because then you throw the baby out with the bathwater and we go back to zero. And I mentioned it earlier, but I am very grateful for a board that is supportive of do the right things and this business will take care of itself. And I think that's a really great place to be.
That is a really great place to be. Bonus question. I thought of one more thing as you were talking, particularly about, I have a number of Danish friends and really value the culture, is the humble posture of the brand and its beginnings. Is that a part of that culture? And so you got to kind of break out of that, particularly for a brash and loud American market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. And I think that's what we got to figure out is we talk a lot about Danish design and that carries with it some equity. I think there's a real, as part of these trend wins we're getting to address, European brands and branding is seen positively by the North American consumer. We have to translate our Danish humbleness into what does that mean in a North American market. And I would say that's not unusual. It's easier for some brands than others, but that's what we got to get done. Yeah.
All right. Well, Neal, thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us to celebrate and really, look back on a first successful year and, huge kudos and congratulations as well as good luck as you continue down this journey. It's not easy. We all know this, but we really appreciate you coming on Shoe and Show to share your insights with us.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And also really appreciate all the work you guys are doing in these crazy times. It's a very great value to us.
Good. I'm glad we provide that. And I'm glad, I hope our viewers and our listeners get a lot of value out of these conversations. You can go to shoeandshow.com for over 500 episodes where we talk to men and women in the industry, just like Neal, who are conscientious, thoughtful, have a vision, and go out and execute against that vision. You can learn tons by joining us every single week, wherever you get your podcast. Sandi, thanks for hanging out with me on this episode. I really appreciate it. And until next time, Shoe and Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.